And we're live. Hi, everyone who is watching at either early in the morning or very late at night tonight. Welcome to the You Say It, We Run It, the Games on Demand panel. I am joined by three of the finest Game on Demand GMs and also myself. And we'll be having a little talk about what we do, why we do it, and how and when we do it. So, the first thing I'd like to do is to introduce ourselves, starting with Josh.
Hello, I am Josh Fox. I'm one half of Black Armada Games, and amongst many other things that I do, I organise games on demand, or games on the hour as we call it, at Dragon Meet in London. Oh,
And
pronounce him.
I would like to pass it on to ET.
Hi, my name is ET, and I am the Games on Demand coordinator for Big Bad Con. I also run Indie Games on Demand Northwest, which is an organization that does a bunch of games on demand type stuff around Seattle conventions.
And finally, Brian.
Hi, my name is Brian LaBerge. I'm a game designer, and I also run I co-run, I should say, Games on Demand at PAX East and PAX Unplugged. I have a partner, and we split the duties.
And I will be your panel moderator, Lloyd. I run Games on Demand at UK Games Expo and also at Gen Con, and I'll be hopefully representing both while we're here. So, just a quick aside, so Games on Demand has always been a really quick, easy to get into, essentially games on demand. You turn up and you play a game, usually for a short period of time, experience the game, and then you sign up for more games. They're mostly focused on indie games and less on the bigger games like Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder. And usually they run for about 2 hours, but each of us do it and organize it in different ways. It started off at Gen Con and has spread across the world ever since. And a small budding community dedicated to running games on demand stuff has been growing steadily over the last few years. We did have a bit of a break during COVID, but even now, both offline and online, it still runs. The problem, though, that we'd like to put here is that pretty much every location does and runs it differently. I would like to go through to the panelists to give us a short little explanation of what they do for their thing and move down. Why don't we start with you, Brian?
Oh, okay, great. So at PAX East and PAX Unplugged, we keep the same system. We started it at PAX East, and I don't think I made it up, if I remember correctly. I think this was in place before me because I'm the third team to run PAX East. And we use what I usually call a live body system. A lot of the tabletop events at PAX East are typically registration based. So, you've got to get there first thing in the morning and sign up. And then in 20 minutes, there's no more signups for the rest of the day. In the past, that's even happened on the first day. And PAX East is a 4-day convention. So on Thursday morning, all the signups go out, and sometimes if you just have your Saturday badge, you never even got a chance to play in games. So we very specifically don't do that. We run games every single hour, and we encourage you to come by a little bit before that hour, depending on how busy that particular day is. You might get there half an hour early. You might get there an hour early during the busiest times. And we do a literal line that becomes first come, first served. So if you are at the start of my line, at the start of the hour, when I start sitting my tables, you get to come up to the front, and I will have a menu of what GMs are running that hour. And each of those GMs will have listed on their menu 1 to 2 games that they are prepared to run. I make them not bring more than 2, much to their chagrin. And the first person gets to pick any game they want. And if you pick a GM that has 2 games, I'll cover the other game up because they cannot run 2 games at the same time. And then the second person gets a pick from anything that's left. So you often end up in games with people you don't know, which is great. You're going to have a great time. and I move my line until I have no more spots at the tables. Sometimes that means that I have to send people away who are in line or give them the option to keep waiting for the next hour. It doesn't happen too often if we do things right, if we've got the volunteers that we need. Sometimes that means I have to send away a GM because I didn't have enough people for the people that I had in line. That happens less often by a lot. I don't send away very many GMs. But yeah, that's how we do it.
Thank you very much, Brian. Let's pass on to Josh, who does it for Indie Games on the Hour at Dragonmeet.
Yeah, so that was really interesting. I think that Indie Games on Demand started before my time, and it was genuinely an on-demand kind of, you literally walk up at any time and ask to play a game, and that I don't think that worked very well, to be honest. There were all kinds of problems with it. So at some point in the intervening time, we evolved it into Indie Games on the Hour, which is kind of similar to what Brian just said. You turn up, games start on the hour, and they go on for 2 hours. However, we operate a slightly different system for signups. In effect, people all turn up just before the hour, and then the GMs yell at them what they're going to run. So they kind of give a pitch for each game. They might have 1 or 2 games per GM, and they shout a description. So we do have like something written down on a piece of paper too, but we don't expect anybody to have read it when they show up. And then people physically go and stand next to the GM whose games they like the sound of. So we get a kind of sense of which GM's games are likely to have enough people to run. Sometimes there could be a little bit of confusion if it turns out that half the people who are stood next to the GM want game A and the other half want game B. That can happen. But generally, then you have a few people who realize that their game, that's not going to happen because there's only them that wants to play it. So then they can kind of reallocate themselves. Like you, we sometimes have people who have to be turned away because we've run out of spaces, though we do our very best to fix that if it happens. And I suppose the other thing to say that is a little bit different is that we have a box of games that we try and bring. So like games that a lot of people know how to run, like Fiasco, Dungeon World, like just games that are quite well known. And what I try to do is find out who can run them in advance so that the person who's running the room has some sense of that. But that only kind of half works. But if somebody rolls in and says, oh, I really wanted to play Fiasco and nobody's offering it, then it's like, well, okay, let's see whether we can do you a game of Fiasco. And also, of course, anybody who rolls in is welcome to pitch a game too. We don't just go with the scheduled GMs. So those are the main differences, I think.
Yeah, we do the same thing as far as like bring games. We've got these Fiasco game binders that we bring, and I tend to print off a bunch of 1 to 2 page RPGs. So if somebody is a volunteer who just shows up that weekend and didn't even know about us, I have some materials for them. And if I've got enough people that I just turn away that they can form their own game group, sometimes I'll just try to find them space. Yeah.
If I may pass through to ET, why don't you give us how it works for your side?
That is an unexpected shared element, actually, to have the games library be the shared thing. Because for when I do Indie Games on Demand, which is the sort of more traveling show at ECCC and OrcaCon, and when the way that I got into it was actually working at it with Ben Robbins at PAX West. We had like also and still do actually like a box of games that's like games that people have donated. So Fiasco, Kingdom, Downfall, all kinds of different things. We have when I run Games on Demand or coordinate Games on Demand for Big Bad Con, we actually do a little bit of a different thing that's somewhat unique in what we've talked about before. And I'm not sure if they do this in Gen Con. I think that this was adapted from the Gen Con Games on Demand. We do a boarding pass system. So you show up, you roll up to the Games on Demand like desk, and there's some really nice people there that are like, hey, how can we help you? And if it's an hour beforehand, or within an hour beforehand, we hand you a boarding pass if you want to sign up, and then we board people like on an airplane, kind of in waves. So all folks show up like about 10 minutes before the hour, and then we start allowing people in waves to come, and we draw the order somewhat randomly. We have like a bunch of big placards, and we shuffle them up, and then we pick them out and we draw them, and show them to people. And we can talk more about that system later. When I do get Indie Games on Demand Northwest as opposed to Big Bad Con, we show, like, it depends on traffic, but we usually show all the game menus for the whole day. And then people can come and sign up for different slots because those are often much lower traffic events than the Games on Demand that I run for Big Bad Con. And then for Go Play Northwest, which is a very small con that we have here in Seattle, I also run what's called the Donut there, which is a lot closer to Josh's system, the Muster system, where on the hour we just have a bunch of people that haven't scheduled their games yet just show up, stand in a big circle, or like sort of stand and sit depending on what they need, and then the GMs, facilitators step forward from the crowd, and often we don't even have the volunteers set up. They were just like, I need 8 facilitators, come here and get your games.
I love that. That's amazing. Before I continue, hey, if you're watching this, we still also take questions, so feel free to put some questions in chat. We'll get to them when we can. So, Games on Demand at Gen Con is exactly as you described, E.T. and Brian. It's a boarding pass system. You turn up on the hour, you give your ticket in, you get a boarding pass. We call out the random boarding passes, and then you pick from 2 games, and then you go through. And it's fairly simple and easy. That is not how we do it at UK Games Expo. Okay, so UK Games Expo, what happens is you buy your ticket either ahead of time or before. The slots are already there for it. You buy it, you turn up, we put you on a table, and the GM at the table offers you 5 or 6 games to pick from.
What?
Yeah, that's how we do it. That's how we roll in England. We don't mess about. We're not here for your muster. We're not here for your boarding pass. We're not here for your calling names out. We're not here for your, I don't know. We literally go, hi, you're here for Games on Demand. Sit there. GM, give them 5 games to pick from.
So you make your facilitators like have 5 possible games? Oh my goodness.
Yes. But the reason why is because our facilitators run the whole convention. They don't do just 16 hours or before 16 hours. They do the whole thing. Usually it's 4 to 5 of us, and we do the whole thing all the way through. And we also allow other people to turn up and run games, but I don't force or limit them to what games they want to run. They can run whatever they want. And I go, just take a seat and I'll bring people to you and they'll run your game. So Games on Demand in the UK runs and works through the multi game system run by one GM over multi games run by a specific number of single game run by multiple GMs. We don't even have a facilitator box where you can just play a game and run, because most of my games are trained to run something close to 5 to 6 games at any point when they can. We also have a question coming out that we're going to jump to before we go all the way down. For all of you, what would you consider your most popular game at your con? Feel free to talk up amongst yourselves.
It definitely changes. The year I started at Games on Demand, but the first year I volunteered, it was Marvel Heroic, the Cortex Plus game. And that's why I volunteered. It is because I was an attendee and I could see they needed GMs. And so I was one of those people who volunteered halfway through the convention. And the most popular game, if I had to average my years, would probably be Fiasco. Fiasco is very popular. So is Dread. There's a lot of demand for Dread. I think people don't have game groups that want to try it, and so they really want to try it at the convention. This past convention that just happened, it was probably Alice is Missing.
Oh wow!
That's it.
How do you do that at a convention?
I think they were having people use their phones, if I remember correctly. I didn't get into it, but
It's always so interesting when with those like really intense games that are the ones that fill.
How about you two? What do you consider your popular games at your conventions? I can't answer this because we don't have a popular game because it's all spread, so I can't answer that one.
I think it depends a lot on the convention. At ECCC, I don't think there is a single one, but we have such a widespread. A lot of times, because we just leave it up to the GMs, because a lot of times it's hard to find volunteers. Anyways, it's just like run whatever you want. So people put all kinds of different stuff on. They put play tests on and things like that. The ones that fill the I'll go with the ones that like fill the fastest, or that like are gimmies. Are things like Masks and Monster Hearts at both at GoPlay and at Big Bad Con. Those, like the Powered by the Apocalypse big namers, usually fill really fast, but like people are also always really excited about novelty. Yeah, I don't know. I actually don't. I can't say like a single game is like that's the golden goose game.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. I think there's games that are popular with GMs because they're suited to this format, and so get offered more. We often get multiple copies of certain games. I feel embarrassed because one of them is Lovecraft-esque, which I wrote, but also games like For the Queen. Anything basically that has a simple structure, can be kind of cut down quite easily, and isn't too complicated to explain and do a load of upfront work, tends to be popular with the GMs. With the players, I mean, you kind of get a lot of people asking for whatever is flavor of the month. I can remember a lot of people asking for Blades in the Dark when it first came out, for example. Not many people offering it, unfortunately. But the one like sort of streak that I have noticed, and I don't know whether this is like a British cultural thing, that people seem to want to play the kind of sillier, funnier games. Games like Goblin Quest. We had one year a very long named game by Ursa Dice, is something like Business Goose Fights the Silly Penguins or something like that. So anything that kind of sounds a bit goofy, it's almost like people are kind of like, yeah, that sounds great. I want to break from all this kind of serious stuff.
Cat!
Not my cat this time.
The next question I have for all of you is essentially, how did you get started in GOD? We've kind of seen that come from Brian, and Josh's is going to require me to say mine first. So I'm going to start this one up and go through. To put it simply, when Games of the Man started in UK Games Expo, there was only one GM running the entire thing. Before I go into this, the game was Games on Demand had been trying to do at UK Games Expo, but it kept coming and not getting the traction and just being pushed back and having a problem. So I got asked to run a beginner game tester for that. And the idea would be that I would volunteer from 9 to 2 at the convention, and then I would run games from 2 to 10. And there wouldn't be that many people. I get 5 people who want to try a game out. So I turned up with 6 games. And by Saturday, I don't remember what happened between the hours of 9 and 10 on that day, because I was so tired. It was so popular. I didn't get a break. All I wanted to do was sleep. And because of that, every year on, we've invited more people in, and they use the same formula that I made up for the singular person Games on Demand. That's why our games run that way at the UK Games Expo. And because of this, I also decided I want to see what it was like everywhere else. So I thought I'll just get on a plane, fly to Gen Con, and just see what was going on over there. Like, whatever. Let's just go for it. Knock yourself out. So I went over there and I just volunteered for 16 hours, and I loved it there too. I'm looking forward to it again this year. Josh.
How did I get into it? Lloyd, is it your fault? I think it
Yes!
might be.
Yes, I did this.
Yeah.
This, John.
I think you just messaged me and said, do you want to organize games on demand? And I was like, yeah, sure, okay. And then the next few years of my life, that was what I did. I haven't been able to escape yet. I haven't found a victim to replace me.
I appreciate your work. E.T.
My story is a little bit similar to Josh's, actually. So prior to me, the person who was doing a lot of the games on demand work in the Pacific Northwest, and specifically in Seattle, Washington, is a guy named Ben Robbins, who ran story games themed meetup night called Story Games Seattle. And I showed up to that, and I was brave and friendly, and he was like, you look like a sucker. Do you want to come help me run games on demand at PAX West? And so I just volunteered there, and I helped him I helped him like run games on demand, like setting it up and just hanging around and making sure we had everything, basic like logistics, volunteer stuff. And I did that ostensibly for a PAX West ticket. That was the exchange, but I never left the games on demand room. I was having way too much fun just like volunteering and like running games, helping people run games, stuff like that. So after he decided to stop running that, because it got very stressful for him to like be running that and have a bunch of other life stuff happening, I ended up picking up the mantle after he sort of put it down, because I wanted to see, I loved the model and I wanted to see it keep happening. And then later, Sean got in contact with me and was like, hey, a friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, said that you look like a sucker. Andy Munich set me up with Sean and introduced me, and Andy is actually a great friend of mine and a wonderful human being.
And finally, Brian.
Yeah, I'll expand on mine. I love my story because I feel like it represents what is important about games on demand for me. I was actually volunteering for a different group. I was volunteering for the group who no longer does it, but used to run D&D at PAX East. And I was having a fairly negative experience, unfortunately. They did not treat their newer DMs very well, in my mind. They really liked their DMs who had been volunteering for a long time, and they treated their newer DMs very differently. And despite that, I volunteered for them for years. And then one day at PAX East, I was very jazzed about the new Marvel game, and I had bought it, and I brought the stuff for it just in case I could like randomly run some pickup games. And I was near the Games on Demand booth, and I heard the host, we called the people at the front desk hosts, talking to some fans about how it was so hard for her to get people into games because it was so popular that year. So I just walked up and I said, hey, I can run this game. I know how to do it. And we'd never met before. And she ran around the table and hugged me. That was her response. To me, it's just a representation of how much joy and appreciation and respect comes from the people who do games on demand. And that's a big deal. So years later, when the person who was running Games on Demand at East had a baby, and he asked me and someone else to pick it up for him, it was a no-brainer because I was going to do it anyway. Like I might as well be the person who's officially running it. That's fine. And then when PAX Unplugged got created, we were the closest Games on Demand to Unplugged, Boston to Philadelphia. And so they asked us, we weren't even sure if we were going to go. And we were like, you know what, that's fine. That gives us a reason to make sure we go. And I recommend the Unplugged, by the way, to anyone who loves games, because it's a great convention. That's my story.
Great things about it.
I'd love to go, but it happens at the same weekend as Dragon Meet. And it's kind of my life, and I have no choice.
Yeah. That's tough.
Can I say that
Oh, go on.
It wasn't a question, but I just sort of want to chime in on what Brian just said about how loved and cared for the volunteers are at Games on Demand. I think there is a really, I don't know whether this is just like a magical thing that happens when you do Games on Demand or something, because it is true, like there's no connection between the two events, but fantastic culture, and it's all driven by volunteers who love the kind of games we offer and love the model. And if you are watching this and thinking, oh, I really want to go and help out at my local Games on Demand, I guarantee you all you have to do is like find out who's running it, just ask, and they will want you to be involved, and you'll have a great time. These are the best events at the conventions they run at, bar none.
We are also very desperate for people, so please come.
We are desperate too, yes.
Desperate, please. We've already worn out all our friends. All right, so we're gonna short fire some questions, because if we don't get to these questions, we're gonna run out of time. So first question coming up for the group: what kind of precautions do you all take to ensure your GMs what kind of precautions do you all take to ensure the GMs you have are safe and follow safety tools, especially on MCS/STS? Thank you. I can't read.
Wait, what's MCS/STS?
Go on, ET.
So this question is about when you have a walk-on like person who wants to run a game. So like Brian, like you were at your very first Games on Demand. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have somebody who's like, oh, I want to run Marvel Heroes, and you're like, okay, how do I ensure that?
For these. For us, UK Games Expo, what happens is usually if someone comes and wants to run a game and I don't know the person, I have like a spiel of things I put down and go, right, if you want to run a game, here are the safety tools, here are the tools up, here's the thing you need. But also, when I seat people down, the first thing I do is I put a giant X card in the center of the table, and I go, no matter what happens, you can always just leave if you're having a problem, or tap that X card and tell me and let the gym know some issue is there. If anything goes up, I will come over and help you, because I can't always give every safety tool due to the speed of GOD for both the panelists and the GMs, but I can always make sure there is something there as an extra clutch for them to use if they need to. Anyone else?
Yeah, we have these little, I can't think of words. Why is it 6 a.m? No, we have these sheets, paper. There we go, words that have been laminated that a volunteer made years ago that have common safety rules on them, and we put them on every single table. That way, when you sit at a table, you have something to reference if you need it. If you are not a walk-up volunteer, I make sure to say at some point, whether it's via email or via our Discord, just to remind people that safety tools exist and you should be using them. If I'm running Honey Heist, which is a game where I've never needed safety tools, I talk about safety tools at the beginning of the game. The asker did clarify that by MCs, STs, they meant Masters of Ceremonies and Storytellers. So they're talking about games like Monster Hearts and Vampire the Masquerade.
Gotcha.
Because those are games that can get
very personal.
Difficult. Yeah. And if somebody runs a lot of Monster Hearts, I absolutely agree. I run a Monster Hearts server, and we recently initiated a rule that said if you try to gather players on this server, you have to have safety tools. Like we're just not letting you poach isn't the right word, but get players from this server if you're not using safety tools. So we really encourage it. And the question brings up a really good point. I feel like I could probably do a better job with the GMs that show up in the middle of the con to talk to them about that. I really could. Like, we've got the stuff on the table, but I kind of assume they've already played a game at one of our tables and so have heard someone talk about safety rules, and I should not be making that assumption.
That's probably fair. Like I said, because I know the people who are sitting down, I'm like, they already got the spiel ready. But new people, it's always good to remind them all the way through. I'm about to jump to the next question, unless Josh or someone else want to add. Oh, ET, hit me.
We actually have at Big Bad Con, we have a field that you fill out, and that actually goes on. I don't remember whether it goes on the card, but we have a field where we, like, not only is that a part of the community standards, the code of conduct for Big Bad, it's also like to be conscious of safety tools and to use them, but it's also actually a thing that you fill out when you fill out the information for your game for Games on Demand, or when you submit a game for the scheduled games. And when we have people submit them for Indie Games on Demand, that's actually a field that goes, like, you fill it out when you're a volunteer that's scheduled beforehand, but when you're not, it's also a field on our, like, we have a blank laminated sheet where you fill out your 2 games with a dry erase marker, and that goes in there. And of course, I mean, so, you know, when we have a GM that doesn't know what a safety tool is, we do run them down. We also have little safety cards, like safety tool cards. At Big Bad Con, we don't usually have a lot of walk-on GMs. We've had a couple of walk-on GMs or MCs or facilitators. But we talk about safety tools no matter what game you're running, because you never know, right? You never know what's going to be a thing that requires safety until it happens. And there is a lot of trust when you sit down at a Games on Demand table. There's, like, automatically trust because you don't know people. And I think that's why the lighter games a lot of times go fast, you know, like, people sign up for those. Because you can't ever 100% ensure that a table is going to be safe. You have to also be walking around as a volunteer. You also have to have people who are trained in how to monitor tables and walk around and check on people, because you can't just know that it's going to work. So I think it's a combination of caretaking by the volunteers, as well as we do require that information from MCs and GMs.
So I got one more question. We're running out of time, so I'm trying to speed through this one as well. What is the fairest and most compassionate way to handle getting folks into game, factoring disparities with ability and privilege?
I'll address that real quick because, like I said, we use a line system, and a line system is not great for some people with disabilities. And so we handle that kind of based off of where I am, because the different cons handle lines slightly differently, and when it gets busy, it's different than when it's not busy. First things first, if you need a chair to wait in a line, I'm going to get you a chair, and I'll fight with the con staff to get you that chair. I have never really had a big fight over it. Generally, if I come up and say, listen, I'm the exhibitor, this person needs a chair because they have reasons they need a chair, that's enough. Sometimes I have to push my point a little more. The other thing that we do is I let people hold places in line, which is contentious. People don't like that, but I don't care. You know, if as long as your entire party is there by the time I start setting the tables, you can hold as many places in line as your group is, and that's because lines are just not built for all people. You know, and what I do try to do is when I'm the host, I'll go to the line at some point, usually multiple points during the hour, and I do a head count. And when I do a head count, I point out who is holding spaces so that people in line know that. But still, sometimes it happens where somebody's waiting in line and they didn't realize there was a big group in front of them, and there's emotions there. But I'm not going to make people wait in line. Every so often, I have a group of 1 or 2 people, and nobody can wait in that line, even with a chair. And you know what? I have come up with systems. I've made other people in line hold a thing for me, like, hold this. This is the person. Thank you. And people are very willing to participate in stuff like that. And then again, when I do my line count, I will point out, this is 2 people. There are 2 invisible people here. And that's the biggest stuff. I don't have other accommodations except for the fact that at East now they've given us curtained rooms, which I think has helped a lot of people participate who wouldn't have been able to participate before. Our tables used to be really close to each other and on top of each other, and there's sensory issues there. And I don't have control over that as the games on demand person. I really rely on my conventions to give me things like that. But stuff like that makes a big difference.
Pipe and
Yeah,
Drip is huge.
I would second that. I feel like we've often had trouble with noise, and because our pitching system is shouting, it's that can be a bit problematic. It is better if we have space outside to do the pitches. Sometimes we have been forced to do them in the room where the games are happening. That is not great. People tend to stand on a chair so that everyone can see them and hopefully hear them, but it's tricky. But what I will say is I think actually Games on Demand is a terrific model for getting people into games who maybe can't get, if you're booking opens online at midnight, there might be some people who can't get there at midnight. If you need to get there first thing in order to get into the queue to book yourself into the regular game slots, that might not be suitable for a lot of people. And the great thing about Games on Demand is you just have to turn up. You turn up at the right time, we can get you into a game. And I feel that is a great equalizer, as well as, of course, the game slots being shorter. 4-hour game slot is not necessarily going to work for everybody. So, I think there's just some general benefit there to the model.
I'm gonna try and keep it short because I know we don't have a lot of time, but I have put a lot of thought into this particular question, so thank you for asking it. After doing a couple of different ways, when I think it depends on crowd size, but when you have a big crowd, and every game is going to fill, you're going to have overflow sometimes. I think the boarding pass system is best. It's not my favorite system, but it allows people to collect a place in line of a certain number, like usually up to 5 or 6, because that's how many we have per boarding group. And then they sit, or they walk around, or they do something else. And the biggest requirement is that you can send someone to the table to pick up those boarding passes. And then everything else, you just have to be there when it happens. You don't have to plan. I love Games on Demand because it accommodates my ADHD, because I don't plan my weekend very well. I am very bad at scheduling games on the internet, and for a little while, Big Bad Con's website was actually very difficult for me to use. So that was huge to be able to show up and let people show up and sign up. So the boarding pass system doesn't require standing. It doesn't require, it doesn't require the ability to necessarily remember the information. You do have to be able to be hearing, because unfortunately we don't right now have a sign interpreter or a way of subtitling our words like in person. But yeah, that is sort of in terms of like accommodating the widest range of people. I found the boarding pass to be the most flexible and versatile in terms of disabilities. And we lost Lloyd. It's a lawless land. Moderate yourselves. This is the true Games on Demand model right here.
Oh no! We're 3 people who are used to running things. This is no good.
It's never gonna work.
It's never gonna work.
We've only got like a 40 seconds. Oh no, that's right. We can still talk for 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
I will say real quick. We'll just expand on the topic for a second. That because someone mentioned hours, how long your games are, and I don't think we all talked about that at East and Unplugged. We try to run a full session. And at different games, that's different lengths of time. So we run in 2-hour slots and in 4-hour slots. And not all the 4-hour games go the full 4 hours. Most of the 2-hour games do go the full 2 hours. But going up there, you can see which games are which length. So at least you have some choice. We used to do all 3 hours, and I didn't like it personally. And I'm in charge, so I changed it.
We have the 2-hour, 3-hour. or 2 hour, 4 hour split
Yeah.
at Big Bad, and then at the Indie Games on Demand Northwest, it's really like, well, tell us how long your game is supposed to be, and we'll write it down so people can sort of make a choice.
I like it.
So I've looked at Lloyd's question list,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm going to ask you a
Josh is Lloyd.
question in character as Lloyd.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to do it in character as Lloyd. So what pitfalls have you encountered running games on demand?
Pitfalls.
Hmm.
I think the biggest pitfall at our cons is not being able to predict when it gets busy and when it's not going to be busy. I have been doing this for a while. I have some vague ideas, and they suck. They're just not good enough, my vague ideas. So I try to schedule my volunteers accordingly to what I think is going to be busy and not busy, but it's just not accurate. The first Unplugged, PAX really thought Unplugged was going to be a sleepy, slow convention. We based our numbers somewhere between the numbers that we get at PAX East and the numbers that I had heard about from Gen Con. And we said, oh, Unplugged would probably be between those two. We were wrong. There was a lot of people that first year. The volunteers actually retaped my line 3 times so they did not get in trouble with the fire department. And it was bigger the year after that. So yeah, that's my biggest issue, really. And I still don't know how to deal with it.
I'm going to say something about that because
Yeah.
I don't know whether there's probably something you've thought of. If you're doing a different cons, it'll be different. But I give all my GMs a little sheet to record how many people they got,
Yeah.
what game they ran, and then I do like statistics on it. So I know,
Mhm.
like for at least for Dragon Meat, I know when it gets busy. I mean, the only thing is like knowing, is this a busy year or a quiet year? You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
last
Right.
year, not post, but post peak of pandemic, if you like. There was a real kind of question. It was the first Dragon Meat since the pandemic started. Whether we're going to get lots of people or fewer people, yeah, it's hard to predict, right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, panelists. You've been fantastic. I'm gonna pretend that the last 5 seconds didn't happen and everything just crashed. Would you like to give us a final idea of where people can find you and how they can volunteer to be with you, please? Let's start with Josh.
Sorry, what was the question? Say it again.
Okay. Oh my God. We're wrapping up. Tell me where they can find you and if they want to sign up for Games on the Hour, where they could go.
Okay, so I am Josh at vaporspace.net. That's VAPOURSPACE.net. Please just reach out to me if you want to run a game. I will say yes for definite. We're very organized. We can get it all sorted out for you. If you would like to come and play a game at Games on the Hour at Dragon Meat, we are usually on the map. You can usually find us, but for anyone who's been to Dragon Meat, you might be familiar with the fact that sometimes the map does not correspond to reality. All I can say, all I can say is, if you are unsure, go down to the trade hall and find the Indie League stall, and someone will tell you where it is happening. And yeah, come on the hour. We will find you a game.
ET.
If you want to volunteer with Big Bad Con, we will. Let's see. I actually have no idea about that. I'm not going to say it. If you want to volunteer with Big Bad Con on a normal year, you would go on the website and you would just volunteer to become a GM at Games on Demand. Easy peasy. Or you can volunteer for a Games on Demand shift through the volunteer portal. With Indie Games on Demand Northwest, we actually haven't run a Games on Demand in a couple of years due to the Panini. Because we haven't really been going to in-person cons. We were talking about whether it was safe, and we decided it wasn't. If you want to come to Go Play Northwest and play in the Donut, which is a baby, very old historic, it's a muster system. It's a historic version of the Games on Demand. we will actually be doing that in June on Discord. And you can go to goplaynorthwest.org to find out more about that, both volunteering and running. And if you want to contact me, you can contact me on the Discord today by talking to us in the post panel chat. Brian, did you put up the Discord for Big Bad Online?
No. You know what I did? I changed my name to the Games on Demand Discord. So you could take a screenshot and
we could just put it into Twitch.
We could have done that, but
I mean,
I don't know. It's 6 a.m. This is my weekend. Were you done, ET? I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. We should talk about your Discord.
Yeah, so I run the Games on Demand Discord. I created it for my games, on Demands. But if you are trying to get to another Games on Demand, usually we can figure out who runs it and connect you to the person. So join the Games on Demand Discord if you're interested in Games on Demand. My last name is LeBurge, which you probably can't spell, but if you can spell it, you can find me on most social medias as just at Brian LeBurge. But there's Discord. That's easier because it's right there.
And my name is Lloyd Jan. You can find me at Drugged Dwarf, one word, on there. I am desperately looking for more people to run Games on Demand at Gen Con and at UK Games Expo. Let me know if you're in the neighborhood. I would love to have more people online. Please let me know. And as far as I'm concerned, that is everything. I'd like to say thank you to my 3 panelists for turning up. Double shout out to Brian for waking up at 6 a.m. Triple shout out to Steve Segedy, who was like, no, I'm not waking up at 3 a.m. for this. It's not happening, Lloyd. I'm going to bed. Thank you very much for watching. I believe that is all we're done, and have a great rest of Big Bad Online. And I really hope that worked.
Yeah.